when we talk about the fact that we're only on the third African American woman a senator. Now, voters throughout the country, you got an opportunity to correct this year. But what does it mean to you, Ernie?
Well, Barbara, to just add on to what Dianne and good morning, Dianne, was saying, it means volumes. But I think the thing that people have to understand is that we're talking about 3 in the span of, a 30-year period, which that might not seem significant to some folks, but you better believe it is the very thing that white men are looking at, because they understand that we don't need 10, 20, or 30 women to make a major statement and cause people to start thinking differently about the issues that confront us. That's the power of having these particular women serving. And more, and for me, in addition, look at who she replaced. She replaced somebody who wasn't just sitting on the sidelines.
Right.
So that brings along more leverage in terms of what she can get done. And I just think, in this short time, it's just a tribute not only to her, but to what women are doing to push the envelope, what Black women are doing to push the envelope, that make this kind of a thing happen.
And it was fascinating because at the beginning of the hearing, Senator Warnock spoke. And, of course, he talked about the horrible, racial discrimination in voting that's going on in the state of Georgia. And all of the fight back. And people were saying, but that doesn't mean anything because, you had the highest American turnout, you had your highest, Black turnout, so and so on. And you know what I was doing, as you can imagine, Professor Quarles and Dianne, you can imagine that I was there filming because we all know, especially you, Dianne Wilkerson, we know that turnout was because of us, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. They're answering this, Barbara. Yeah, this is what they're saying. What are you complaining about? Whatever we did, y'all still won.
Right.
And that's their answer.
And they don't want to, face the fact that the only reason why you had that good turnout was because we were on the ground giving rides to and those amazing, organizers in Georgia, those great groups like the Georgia Coalition for the Agenda and everything, were, giving people rides, helping people, answering their questions. And when people were getting there and saying, where's my polling place, what happened to it, we were able to give them the answers through the election protection hotline and all of that. People don't want to talk about the fact that that people were so worried about their vote being denied that's why they turned out so hard. But even still with that, we saw voter suppression. We saw people being denied the right to vote. So don't get it twisted. I really was upset, just listening to that. But I loved hearing Senator Butler's moral authority when she said, basically, excuse me, but I was just in Alabama, and I just had a hearing, and I just heard about the voter suppression that people are, facing. So it was, so powerful. Also, I got to mention this because I would be remiss, folks. Opening up the first panel was also Wesley Hunt. And I sat there and I said, oh, Lord, he might be he might be a relative of mine. My family, my mom's family were, Hunts. So he's a Hunt. And I said, oh, my goodness, out of Louisiana, where my mom's family is from. I said, oh, my goodness. And now he resides in Texas, where my family has a lot of Hunts, too. And I said, oh, no. But he was basically up there doing that whole, anti-black thing, right? Because the black anti-black, saying, I'm just angry that people are trying to imply that black people don't have the wherewithal to get photo IDs and don't play our community down like that. I mean, just that deceptiveness. He knows as well as anybody else that African Americans have a higher rate of not having and owning cars. He knows that.
Right.
That's right.
Come on, right, folks? I mean, how can people forget the Superdome and Katrina and all those black folks who were caught because they didn't have cars? We gotta, just be real. 47% of all young African Americans do not have a driver's license. For obvious reasons. It takes a while to get the financial means to work, to have the ability to buy a car. And then you live in these areas where the insurance rates are so high that a lot of people prefer not to have cars. So I can't afford it, I should say, also. So anyway, when you think about this, now there's going to be another hearing today at 3 o'clock, everybody. Be sure to tune in. There's going to be another hearing today at 3 o'clock by Klobuchar's Rules Administration Committee, and they're going to be talking about the Freedom to Vote Act, which will be, really wonderful. So please be sure to do that. Now, I have a question for our guests. Let's get to zero in on this issue of Black women's history and the midst of Women's History Month. When you consider the African genius of black women in the United States, what are some of your favorite historical figures?
Yeah.
That question to you, Ernie.
Wow. God, I've got a bunch, but off the top of my head, I would say...
Bring them on.
Right. Ida B. Wells, clearly, Harriet Tubman.
Don't say Ida B. Wells, that's mine.
Gotta get some more. Go ahead.
Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Ella Baker, Anna Julia Cooper, Billie Holiday, Hazel Scott, Zora Neale Hurston, Ruby Dee, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Pauli Murray.
My. Wow, that's a list. And people who are listening to our listeners, if you heard that list and you heard a name you didn't know, write it down. Write it down and look, Google that person and find out more about them, because he just talked about some amazing women, and we're going to come back and go through who they are and why are they so amazing. Dianne, who is on your list of major figures?
I'm still gonna say Ida B. Wells, and why?
Absolutely.
Why?
Tell
the first, the bravery. Like, every day she got up, she knew the danger that she was in for simply trying to be a medium for information for Black folks about what was happening to them. You imagine a whole life like on the run, right? And so I have a special place for so many, as Ernie did, but for the ones who were leaders, like the first. And so there's a reason. So the Black Women Law Society in Massachusetts is called the Ida B. Wells Barnett Law Society for that reason, the importance of communication. It's also why I'm such a huge fan, and I brag and talk all the time about TJC and the work that we do in the igniting change, the importance of having the medium. I think the second person would be Claudette Colvin, because she is forgotten as the first one who refused to give up her seat, right?
Yes.
Didn't fit the kind of the perfect profile of who the NAACP wanted to push in terms of, in the likes of Rosa Parks. But I just, having been there so often, have a special place in my heart for the Black women who were the first at what they did, which means they had nobody around them to look for to say, if she can do it, I can too, right? Which is how so much of our movement today is based on for us is just knowing that somebody else did a whole lot more with a whole lot less. But these folks had nobody to look to because they were the first. So that would be my commentary on this one.
Right, and think about it. Ida B. Wells Barnett was fighting for anti-lynching, legislation by the U.S. Congress, and people don't know that. People wanted to lynch her for her bravery.
That's right.
But also, isn't it ironic that the anti-lynching legislation everybody just passed last year, 2023, 100 years later, right, Dianne?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Can you imagine?
That just shows you that sometimes these battles, you got to stay in the fight. You can't just expect to win overnight. But it was beautiful that, Senator Cory Booker and others were able to stand there and to make that legislation pass, and the real, commitment of so many. So I wanted to ask you, Ernie, let's go through your list. Let's walk down some of those women so that we can talk about what they've accomplished and why people need to know them. So let's, go down your list. We just talked about, one of the very amazing women on your list, and Dianne contributed to, Claudette Colvin. So let's go through the rest of them so that people know who they are.
Sure. In fact, to add to what Dianne was just saying in terms of Ida B. Wells, one of the things that people may not be aware of is that there was a letter, a handwritten letter that Frederick Douglass wrote to Ida B. Wells, essentially celebrating her bravery and courage. And what Douglass admitted in the letter, that as many things as he might have done, he did not have the courage to do what she had done.
Wow.
And, that speaks volumes. And it also should talk about framing to people. I grew up in Black history with Frederick Douglass, with a little sprinkling of women here and there to MLK. And if you go back and you really research the history, Douglass was politically more of a moderate and conservative to moderate by the time he died. It was Ida B. Wells and the women of the late 19th century who were the foremost radically thinking group in this country's history. And that's what Ida symbolizes.
And people forget that not only was she this amazing advocate, not only was she brave enough, like you were saying, to go into these southern townships and document lynchings and killings of blacks. Not only was she that, and to stand up to Congress and say you need to pass legislation when they didn't even want black women to be there unless they were there as maids. It's amazing, but people also forget that she was a black woman suffragist, right? And that she was, there's this famous picture of her from a march that was held in Washington, D.C., where the white women suffragists told all the black women to get to the back of the parade, back of the protest, because they didn't want the soil in the white men's minds, the importance of the white woman's vote, and that the vote was more likely to be given if they saw it as being for white women. And Dianne, you know what Ida B. Wells did. You know what she did when they said get to the back of the line. My sister went to the front of the line and marched in the very front of the line. And that's one of my favorite Ida B. Wells stories. Tell us some more. Let's go through some more of those names that you had, Ernie.
Okay, Anna Julia Cooper.
Let's talk about Anna Julia.
And for people who